At 84, Eleanor Miller had seen the world change in ways most people couldn't imagine. She had lived through wars, political upheaval, and social revolutions. But there was one thing that had never changed for her: her compassion for others. Despite living alone in her small house on the outskirts of town, Eleanor always kept a kind heart, especially for those who had nothing. For years, she had heard stories of the homeless man who lived near the train station. Jacob, they called him. He was always there, wrapped in ragged clothes, looking for scraps and warmth wherever he could find it. Most people ignored him, passing by with their heads turned. But not Eleanor. Every time she walked past Jacob, she couldn't help but feel the weight of his loneliness. It was as if his whole life had been stripped away, piece by piece, until all that was left was a man lost to the world. And for Eleanor, that was something she couldn't just ignore. She started offering him small gestures of kindness: a warm blanket, a sandwich, a cup of tea. At first, Jacob was wary. He had been turned away by so many people that his trust in others had been worn thin. But over time, he began to recognize the kindness in Eleanor's heart. They would sit together on the bench by her house, talk about the weather, and share stories of days gone by. Jacob never asked for anything more than what she offered, but she could see that he was hungry, not just for food, but for connection. One winter evening, as the temperature dropped below freezing, Eleanor found herself walking past the train station again. She spotted Jacob sitting on the cold pavement, shivering with his head lowered, his back hunched against the bitter wind. Without thinking, Eleanor walked up to him and gently placed her hand on his shoulder. "Jacob," she said softly, "why don't you come inside for a bit? I have a warm bed and a hot meal waiting for you." Jacob looked up in surprise, his weathered face softening. He had never expected an invitation like this. He had lived on the streets for so long, used to the harshness of the world, that kindness had become a foreign concept to him. But here was Eleanor, extending her hand to him once again. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice rough and uncertain. Eleanor nodded with a smile. "Of course, I'm sure. I can't let you freeze out here. It's too cold." Jacob stood up slowly, unsure if he should accept. But something in Eleanor's eyes made him feel safe, a feeling he hadn't known in years. He accepted her offer, and together they walked to her house. The warmth of the house greeted him like a hug, a stark contrast to the coldness of the world he had come from. As they sat down at the dinner table, Jacob took in the simple comfort of the room. It was nothing extravagant, but to him it felt like a palace. The food Eleanor had prepared was warm and filling, and for the first time in years, Jacob felt full, not just in body, but in spirit. Over the next few weeks, Jacob found himself visiting Eleanor more often. She had become a mother figure to him, someone who cared for him when no one else would. And slowly, the idea of asking for help began to feel less shameful. Eleanor's kindness had shown him that there was still goodness in the world, something he thought had been long lost. But as much as Jacob appreciated her generosity, Eleanor had a secret. Her health had been declining for some time. It wasn't anything drastic, but the simple act of climbing the stairs had become more difficult. And the doctor's warnings had been clear. She couldn't keep living on her own forever. She needed help. One afternoon, as the two of them sat on her porch, watching the sunset, Eleanor finally gathered the courage to speak her mind. She had been thinking about it for a long time, but wasn't sure how to say it. "Jacob," she began, her voice trembling slightly, "I want to ask you something. Something important." Jacob turned to her, his brow furrowing with concern. "What is it, Eleanor?" Eleanor took a deep breath, looking out at the horizon. "I want to offer you something. My home. I can't take care of it much longer, and I don't want it to go to waste. I want you to have it." Jacob stared at her, shocked by her words. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Eleanor, you don't have to..." "I know I don't have to," she interrupted gently, "but I want to. You've been there for me when I needed a friend. I want to do the same for you." Jacob sat in stunned silence as Eleanor's words hung in the air. He had never expected anything like this. A home? For him? It was hard to imagine. His life had been lived on the streets, drifting from one temporary shelter to the next, always uncertain of where his next meal would come from or where he would sleep at night. The thought of having a permanent place to call home felt like a dream. But looking at Eleanor, he saw something in her eyes, something genuine. Her offer wasn't out of pity or obligation. It was out of a kindness he hadn't known in years. She had seen him not just as a homeless man, but as a person deserving of love and dignity. "But Eleanor, I can't accept this," Jacob said, shaking his head. He was overwhelmed with a mix of gratitude and disbelief. "This is your home. I couldn't possibly—" Eleanor reached out, placing a hand gently on his. "You deserve it, Jacob. You've been there for me when I needed someone, and now I'm offering you the same in return. Please take it. It's yours." Jacob's eyes filled with emotion as he tried to comprehend the magnitude of what she was offering him. This wasn't just a house. It was a chance for a new life. A life where he could finally escape the cold streets. A life where he didn't have to be afraid anymore. It was everything he had ever wanted. And yet, he wasn't sure if he was worthy of it. "I don't know what to say," Jacob muttered, his voice thick with emotion. "No one has ever done anything like this for me before." Eleanor smiled softly. "I know, Jacob. I've watched you struggle for years, and I can't stand to see you living in fear and uncertainty anymore. You're a good man, and you deserve happiness, security, and a place where you can build a future." Jacob felt a lump rise in his throat. Eleanor's kindness was overwhelming. He had never known anyone who would offer so much with no expectation in return. It was more than he had ever dreamed of. After a long pause, Jacob finally nodded. "Thank you. I don't know how to repay you, but I promise, I'll take care of it. I'll make sure this place is taken care of, and I'll make sure you don't regret this." Eleanor's smile grew wider, her heart swelling with happiness. "I know you will, Jacob. Just promise me one thing. Promise me that you'll never forget that you're worth it. No matter where you've been or what you've been through, you're worth it." With that, the two of them sat in silence, the weight of the moment sinking in. It was a moment of pure kindness, an act of selflessness that would change both of their lives forever. Over the next few days, Jacob moved into the small but cozy house filled with warmth and light. Eleanor had made sure it was ready for him, clean, comfortable, and full of the essentials. She showed him where everything was, made sure he felt at home, and told him that from now on he would have a family. As Jacob settled into his new life, he found himself experiencing things he had never thought possible. The warmth of a real bed, the comfort of a roof over his head, the luxury of food that was always available. It was all so new to him, and yet it felt like he had finally found a place where he belonged. But it wasn't just the material comforts that Jacob cherished. It was the sense of peace that came with knowing he was safe, knowing that Eleanor believed in him when no one else had. And as he sat in the quiet house one evening, reflecting on how far he had come, he couldn't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude. For the first time in years, Jacob felt like he had a future. As the days turned into weeks, Jacob settled into his new life with Eleanor's support. The house, once just a place to stay, slowly became a home. The shelves that had once been bare were now stocked with groceries. The rooms, once quiet and empty, now echoed with the sounds of laughter and light-hearted conversation. Eleanor visited him every few days, checking in to make sure he had everything he needed, bringing small gifts and sharing stories of her younger days. Jacob grew to look forward to her visits, her kind presence filling the space with warmth. He had never known such love and care from anyone before. One afternoon, as they sat on the porch watching the sun dip below the horizon, Jacob turned to Eleanor, his voice full of emotion. "Eleanor, I can't thank you enough for what you've done. You've given me so much more than a house. You've given me hope." Eleanor smiled, her eyes twinkling. "You don't have to thank me, Jacob. You've earned this. You've always been worthy of kindness, even when you couldn't see it." In that moment, Jacob realized that Eleanor had given him something more precious than just a home. She had given him the belief in himself that he had lost long ago, and with that belief, he began to rebuild his life. As the months went by, Jacob found a job, started to make friends, and even began volunteering at the local shelter, helping others who had once been in his shoes. He never forgot Eleanor's kindness and promised himself that he would pay it forward. Jacob had gone from being a homeless man to someone with a future, all because of the selflessness of one 84-year-old woman.